Ntsane, thank you so much for taking time out today to talk to us.
Thank you very much. I'm excited for having me.
Oh, wonderful. Can you help the viewers and the listeners understand who you are, what your company does, and where you're from?
Oh, great. I'm Ntsane Reginald Lepholisa. I'm from Lesotho. It's a beautiful country in the middle of South Africa. And I'm developing Flesh. It's a payments as a platform. It's a PaaP application, which is trying to create a digital wallet, but more than that, to create a platform for users in Africa to actually have access to basic services, financial services.
So what gets you excited about being able to create a financial account without any source of income?
For the first time, we are detaching the social class of someone having an income, because that is, you either have you're working somewhere, or you're self-employed. We are detaching that from the very concept that you need to have access to basic banking. So that excites me, that for the first time we might be able to actually do that. Give everyone, literally everyone who has money or moves money, a basic access to banking without saying you should have income or you should be employed. It's a detachment that really needs to happen. It's too late. In Africa, you literally, as we speak, when you walk into a bank, they're going to ask you, how are you going to fund the account? That's literally saying, where do you get money? It's a question, but literally they're trying to say, we want you to have income, regular income. And that's basically why most people don't have a bank account. It's not even that some of them cannot afford. They can, but they can give satisfying information to banks that they have access to income. So the first, that very aspect that we are going to be able to say, scrap that. If you move money, you need to have a safe place where you keep that money. That's what gets me really excited about developing Flesh.
So with Flesh, what are you doing to innovate in that space? I mean, obviously you're talking about giving somebody a safe place to store the money in between when the money may not be consistent. It may be intermittent or come from different areas, not a single source of income.
Yes.
So what kind of innovation are you guys doing in there to really bring that out to the populace?
So let me start here. You remember in Africa we have something called mobile money already.
Yeah.
It's quite prevalent everywhere. The challenge with that, this will speak to how we are innovating. The challenge with mobile money is that people still use it to cash in. You send someone money, they cash in, and they cash the entire cash out. They convert it back into cash.
Oh, so they're just transferring it from cash to digital back to cash.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's defeating the entire purpose, but there's a reason why they're doing that. It runs on USSD strings, which is an older technology. So basically, if I was to buy water from you right now using mobile money, I have to respond to maybe 4 texts. Send a text, it responds, I respond back, it sends me back, I respond. About 4 times in most cases, just to pay maybe 50 cents. Literally, that means if you send me money, I'm just going to cash that thing out and go back to cash. And so what we are trying to elevate is that we are trying to bring in a bridging technology that will help people who already have smartphones, because there's an explosion of smartphones in Africa, to ensure that those who already have mobile money, we give them a nicer user interface that actually helps them truncate that process into simply perhaps scanning or invoking payment credentials. And now suddenly one operator, someone who's with one telecom operator of mobile money and someone who has a bank card, that lucky one who has a bank card, can actually get into one platform. So this is why we are calling it payments as a platform, because it's not just to say we are creating a digital wallet, but we are creating a platform so that people can have basic access so that they can do all these other things. So what we are developing, what's the most exciting technology that we are bringing is that, well, when we're in the US or in other developed markets, developing a wallet is, you're providing an alternative. But in Africa, the spectrum is different. When you're developing that, you are actually trying to bring in people for the very first time who have never have access to banking before. You are giving them, you're literally opening this for the very first time for them to have access to that. And the difference there with here is that we've got unique challenges of data costs. In some countries in Africa, data costs 3 times as expensive as in the US, but you guys have much higher living standards, but we pay much more for data, and energy is not there every day. So we developed something called FleshPass. What we are trying to do is we are trying to bring biometrics into the entire ecosystem, that you need to interact with Flesh at registration. So when merchants have Flesh and you have Flesh, we allow customers to activate something called FleshPass. So what they do, they simply use the same app, say, I live in this community, I buy from this garage convenience store, I take taxi from here to here. So they demarcate a zone, and from that zone, next time when they go to that store, they need to simply invoke their payment credentials and complete the payment without their device. Then they can authorize that payment later on while they're already back. So it bridges across cutting-edge issues of high data costs of needing to be active online all the time, which is what most fintechs won't tell you, that actually people aren't able to be online all the time. So we want them to still be able to conclude transactions. So it's a bit of inspiration. I live in China, so the inspiration comes from there, that they had a problem with shared bikes, so they're all over the city. So they found a way, how do we control these things? So we figured out what they did. They recreated the entire virtual city and said, okay, we are going to demarcate these places, and from this place, anyone who parks from this place, they won't be able to actually lock their bikes. So that works. So what it sort of works. So what we thought, okay, this thing, the biometrics thing worked. Sometimes it failed. But when you bring this concept of being able to geolock something within a certain area, when you apply that in payments, it's not a geographic area that you can literally bypass with VPN or something like that. But when a user activates FleshPass, what it does in our system, it literally links all the merchants who are in that area with that account, so that there's a stronger user authentication in that process, that they have said they live within this area, so they can go there without their device and simply go into the merchant and check out. And I know the most obvious question is, how do you do that? Do you upgrade the POS systems, which we know it's almost impossible. The merchants are not going to replace. So this is the nicer part of developing a platform, because the same application that the merchant has is the same application that the user has. You're not making a B2B separate application and then a user application. It's the same application that anyone can start their merchant or service through it. The difference is in the KYC protocol, that if you're now running a store, it means you need to have higher authentication and compliance levels, but it needs to be agile and versatile enough that when you have a smartphone, the same smartphone, someone can interact with it if you are now registered as a merchant to authenticate and pay within that. So it makes it mobile. So for the first time, you walk into a street, if you scan, you scan. If you invoke payments by biometrics and then a few key details that will be known by you. We're not being too loud about that because sometimes when you be loud about that, that's when you literally get people you don't want to get ahead to try and manipulate the same system. But yes, that's what gets us excited.
So you mentioned that it's kind of a mixture of online and offline, mobile, non-mobile.
Yes.
Do you think you could have done this without a smartphone?
No. The simplest answer is no. The advent of this kind of technology is made possible by a smartphone. Remember, because we are addressing issue of access. First, mobile money brought access, but with mobile money there are those challenges I mentioned. Mm-hmm. So in order to migrate from that, you have to apply technology that can only be populated and run on a smartphone. But we are connecting. It's not like we are regarding mobile money as a legacy system, then we are moving over to something. We are creating a platform where you can still modernize mobile money so that people who are still registered there can have a better user interface so that they can transact. But as you say, it's mobile and not mobile, and offline, then online and offline, or online to offline sometimes if you have the same thing. But the key architecture of this is to create a platform. I'll explain this more because I'm sure it's not exactly clear. Is it a wallet? You have to create a platform.
So is it a wallet?
No.
Or it feels like it is a wallet and it is a platform, but it's not just a platform, it's a wallet, and it's not just a wallet, it's a platform. So
that kind of gets confusing, right?
It does. That's why I was thinking.
Let me explain it this way. Here in the US, when I arrived, I don't know how many digital wallets are here, but you guys still use credit cards.
That is the digital wallet.
You still use, you may have a digital wallet, but I figured out in most of the places here in the hotel, here where we are, everyone here wants a credit card with your name on it. They say it's for fraud reasons whatsoever the case is. But the basic premise is everywhere I go, and so it confirms what we look at statistics that you guys use plastic cards a lot. The thing that tells you the exact problem why most of these fintechs that are in Africa are not exactly converting people. There are 350 million people now who still keep money in mattresses, but there are so many fintech companies in Africa. The problem is that creating wallets, digital wallets. And the difference with that is when you create a wallet, consumers treat it as such. It's an alternative to cash. So anytime they don't feel tension high enough to use a wallet, they're just going to use cash. But the difference with that is if you have something that has highest intention, and unfortunately I have to refer you back to mobile money for you to understand. If you're in a house and then electricity cuts off, you use prepaid electricity at 9 p.m., 10 p.m., literally all the places are closed. That causes too much tension if you're watching TV or you're working that you need to get it back. It's high enough that if you remember that in mobile money, you can log in there and then get electricity, it comes on, you're going to use that thing. That's the difference. What we're trying to create, we are trying to mimic a community lifestyle. So we are connecting a community, find routine things that they're doing, so we connect the services that they do on a daily basis and simply make sure that when they need to perform those things, there's actually a central place where they can execute the payments through. So it's a different approach. Not saying giving you a wallet, but you discover someone is taking a taxi every day and you know they need cash in the morning or change to do that, or is someone going to a grocery store every day to buy something, or things that are routine. We do agriculture, most people buy stuff in the morning, milk and eggs and stuff like that. You connect things that they do every single day, paying electricity, buying stuff, but simply in a much nicer, as we say, interface. Suddenly you have a platform. So all you need to do now is you have created something that they definitely need to use, but it's how you package it. This is why we're saying first we are focused on making sure that the platform works, and then it's revolved around payments. It's a concept that was coined by GSMA. Fun enough, the payments as a platform, a PaaP. So we are simply creating a platform that is centered around payments to make sure that the community is able to find things that are relevant there. If I make an example, it's a terrible mistake. It's a terrible example. You'll excuse me. If you're targeting people who live in the strip here, what do you think the most high tension thing that you could help them with is? You walk into the lobby, there's something that you'll see there. It's an entry point. Everyone is in the casino floor.
The check into the hotel too, though.
Check into the hotel, it's casino floors. If you manage for both the hoteliers here and the travelers who come here and people who are in the casinos, if you manage to create a better experience for them instead of queuing there, getting coins and then going back and going to the cashier. If you can manage to solve that problem for them in a meaningful manner, that makes it better than cash. Remember, the keys has to be better than cash, because most of the digital wallets, as we heard from the conference, they are creating problems. They're creating solutions that are searching for problems. So suddenly you have a unique problem. So how do you move someone from something that's more simple to something that's more complicated? That's the idea, and that's our approach with Flash. We are trying to make sure that we target things that are really problematic, that we know. And the key to that is cash is really hard to get. There are very few ATMs, most of them are unsafe. I have had the same experiences. Then we have had mobile money for people who don't have access to banking. And mobile money, as we said, you just can't send 4 texts every day just to buy water, even if you can truncate it as much as you can. So if you can solve those things acutely, then you're sure to create an environment. The problem with that is people see, okay, these people are not able to move cash. Let's just make something for them to move cash. Well, if it's not going to fit into their lifestyle, they're going to treat it as an alternative if they're unable to move cash.
Right. So what I hear is that you're taking Flash, and instead of making it an alternative, you're
making it a utility.
You're making it a utility, yes.
Yes. To make something a utility, you understand it has to fit right into the community, yes, how the community lives. This is why if you checked our description, you said Flash is first a community. Then it's a mobile POS and a commerce. So that's the difference of approach. It has to fit into the community so it becomes a utility. And you can't make a utility by dropping it down like you're making a social media app that has to be popular. You have to go down into your community, connect the merchants there in that small community, make sure that everyone has that, because if everyone has it in that, there's a likelihood that when users see, you avoid the chicken and egg situation.
Right.
You know, the chicken and egg situation is where someone in that equation doesn't need the other. Right. But if that other person develops that, it will still benefit them. So it creates that thing. Mm-hmm. And so the way you avoid it, that we think we can execute it, is simply by making sure that we get down to the basic, very basic level at a community level and see if we can connect it fully and see how it works. Then we use anchors to connect one community to the next. There is a way you do that, as we figured out. I would love to tell you more about how that works.
No worries, I appreciate it.
Yes.
So let's, what is it that you've taken away, what is the biggest thing or the things that you've taken away from attending the Pay Symposium over the last couple of days?
Oh, where do I start?
Just what's the big, like, what are the big things that you've taken away?
Apart from the fact that someone said, know your customers, kill your customer. Yeah, that's one of the things that excited me, because it was actually referring to something very important. But I would be honest with you, it's mostly C-level kind of event, very intimate. Conversations here are more practical. And what I learned at most is that there is a lot more talk about fintech than actually what's going on outside. So the conversations here, sometimes you hear a presentation, you hear questions, that self-answers them as people engage. So it's sort of attending Pay. If I didn't, I would still be hyped up maybe about fintech and what's going on and stuff. But when you come here, you get sobered up a little bit. You get the crisp of what's happening actually, what actually exists. And I learned a lot about the difficulties of APIs, for example, in Europe. I didn't know that banks were that. I know banks normally, they know how to whip fintechs, but I didn't know they were that much harder in Europe. But that's one of the things I learned, that they keep changing this APS so that such that these fintech developers end up having to find an alternative way to truncate or find an alternative place where an aggregator, an API aggregator who simply connects them and makes sure that as the bank makes changes, he's the one who makes change. He also updates, then the fintech simply connect to that person who has updated API. So it's critical information that I don't know. I don't know which conference would have given us that or given me that insights. And it.
Who would you suggest attend and why?
If you are a founder first in fintech, you might want to come to pay the very next time you hear about it, because you will have a gist of exactly what's going on from the bankers. I won't mention names, but you and I know the kind of...
We had some very large banks here, yes.
Exactly. We've got very large banks who are frank about what they do, why they say no sometimes to things they say no to, and what they're looking at, what excites them. So that alone says, if you're also a bank, a community bank, say you're trying to figure out, are these fintechs the vultures that are going to eat us out? Or you want to come to pay and understand that actually there's a lot of partnership that needs to happen. So if you're a community banker trying to figure out, how do I digitize, how do I leverage partnerships with these fintechs, you want to come here. Also, if you're a fintech startup that's trying to grow, you get information that you probably think you have to buy it, and these guys are free to share, and that's what I learned at most. And apart from that, the most important thing is networking. These people are highly connected with one another, it's fluid, so when you come here, it cuts let's say an API discussion with one of the bank from, let's say, 10 months to 2 weeks or 3 weeks, because you kind of already figured out what each one is at what stage of digitization, and you get there easier. So yeah, those are the kind of people I would say: founders, the bankers who are in that industry, and the technology providers. That's what was exciting. We heard from one of them that, yeah, the technology providers also need to come, so they don't sell a one-size-fits-all. They understand that what each party is trying to do. Yeah.
Well, Ntsane, thank you so much for your time today. We covered a lot of ground.
Thank you.
And I know we're going to get a lot of questions about what else you guys have going on, but it's fantastic what you've decided to do.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.